Convenience will be the death of the West. We are seeing like a breakdown of this iron grip that the dollar has on payments across the world. Our mission is to make sure that Africa does not miss out on the incredible opportunity that is presented by Bitcoin. We've never seen an asset like this that provides this power. There is a level of disrespect that Africa receives globally.
You have the IMF coming into African nations, constantly borrowing them this money that they print out of thin air, and then taking out their full resources. Bitcoin now allows African countries to use their natural resources to mine Bitcoin, therefore creating their own money.
What is the point of signing up for a bank account and putting your money there? It's like signing up to be robbed.
What are you both doing in the African community? What does Bitcoin especially do, like for your region, and what are you seeing there?
Well, I would say right now, in terms of what value are we adding in the Bitcoin space in Africa, we are basically doing our very best with education. We hope that our show gets out to the people in Africa, since we're Africans. The familiarity will help, even though we're not speaking the local languages. There's a lot of languages on the continent, but our show is focused to get some of that familiarity, have more of the Africans in the space being visible, being accessible. So we're doing a lot of that, and each time we go to we're back on the continent, we're basically always trying to orange peel people, trying to connect with people in the space as well. I don't think it's time to start, at least for us, to start trying to develop dApps on layer 2 or anything like that for Bitcoin. I think the core focus right now is education, and that is what we're focused on, and that's what we've been doing. So each time we're on the ground, we're trying to be there, educating people, and when we're not there, we're doing that through our show all the way here in the States.
What would you say is the current state of Africa and Bitcoin? Is it widespread? What's the percentage-wise adoption like? What do people in Africa don't get about Bitcoin? What's the hurdles that you see when you educate people?
It's definitely split. There's I want to say like a half and half sort of deal. There is people who have access, right? And that also means access to the knowledge and access to, purchasing Bitcoin and things like that. Mm-hmm. Trying to transact with it. But on the other hand, there is a huge population as well that still has the same technology, but they just do not have the information. So for where it is, and I think, and this is also part of our mission, right, overall here, with what we're doing with STAKK and for the adoption of Bitcoin overall, is to make sure that Africa does not miss out on the incredible opportunity that is presented by Bitcoin, right? Because this is one of those things where, unlike any other time in mankind, like anyone else would agree, we've never seen an asset like this that provides this sort of power to the people, right? So, right now, it is very clear to me, at least, recently I was in Addis and I noticed that there is people who know about Bitcoin, and those people would be like, they operate with it and treat it the same like you and I would. But then there's also the other group of people that they've either never heard of it, or everything they've heard about it is that it's a scam. So there is the correction that needs to happen there in the first place to get people to realize that Bitcoin is not a scam, and then getting them to understand the incredible opportunities that Bitcoin presents.
Yep, I'd like to add to that too. Yeah, because the continent is huge, right? So there's the Eastern Hemisphere, Western and Southern Hemisphere, right? So the Eastern Hemisphere, like Kenya, Addis, like you said, Egypt, those guys are on it. Western, you have Nigeria, you have Ghana, that I'm familiar with, that I know that are either already on the layer 2 technologies, peer-to-peer solutions, etc. South Africa, I'm not too familiar with that aspect of the country, but I keep an eye on what's going on the Bitcoin network, and I do see a couple of big purchases on that part of the continent as well. But in terms of talking to people on the ground, yeah, there are people that are in it for the peer-to-peer or trying to make money. Because if you look at it, their currencies are constantly being devalued. So there's that arbitrage approach where people say, hey, I can buy Bitcoin, right, with either my cousin's account on Binance or somewhere in another country, get it transferred and sell it to somebody that cannot easily buy it on the continent for a higher price. So people are using that approach as well. So plus we can also look at it as people have it tough, right? So they're not thinking of a revolutionary technology that would free them from from neo-colonization. They're thinking of it of, oh, I gotta feed my family. This technology allows me to do that. It's quite volatile. It goes up and down. They trade it and they make money that way to provide for themselves. But what we're trying to do is that, yes, you can do all of that, but you actually need the technology to free you from neo-colonization. So that's part of what we're trying to do.
Yeah, very good. And when you encounter people, like, what's the case for Bitcoin in Africa? Like, why? Like, what will Bitcoin do for the African country in general? Because I think everyone will benefit from Bitcoin. I think that even the last person that will get into Bitcoin will benefit from it greatly. But especially countries like America, who have the Federal Reserve, they have an incentive to not have a Bitcoin standard because they have the US dollar standard and they have a lot of force over the world because of that. But I think countries who are not in this position as the US dollar and America is, they have a way greater incentive to try something like Bitcoin, like El Salvador also is trying right now and really aggressively. What's your thoughts on that for Africa?
Well,
that's a good question.
That's a good question.
That's the biggest question of the century.
Yeah, that's a good question. That's a good question. So here's maybe we can talk about some things that are happening, because these are the things that need to change, right? And I think that Bitcoin definitely presents the opportunity for these things to change. So if we look at, for one, there is a level of disrespect that Africa receives globally, right? I think Dr. Arikana Chombori, who was, she used to be an African UN representative to the USA. She speaks about this as well. And even when we have things like the G7 nations, global, leadership meetings, where Africa is part of those meetings, right? It's a thing where they are not involved in those meetings as participants. It's almost like they're spectators, and then the West gets to decide what they want to do and then, pass that information on to Africa. Most recently, I think that the form of disrespect that many African leaders have been actually pointing out is this idea of the West trying to tell African nations what they can or cannot do. You guys can buy this now. You guys cannot buy this now. You can trade with this person. You cannot trade with that person. And the list goes on and on. I'm sure Double O, you probably add some things that I'm missing here.
Fire away.
Right? Yeah. But that's the first thing. The disrespect, right, on a global scale that Africans are facing all the time. I think that is one of the things that we need to change, which is happening. Yeah. And we can dive into how Bitcoin help with that. Then, I mean, when you look at from the global market standpoint, I mean, we've all heard before, Africa is the richest continent when it comes to natural resources. Yet, if you look at the global market indices, you see they only have Egypt and Kenya in there. They don't have all the other countries that, are clearly...
Sometimes they skip the entire continent.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes they skip the continent, right? And it's like all the way at the bottom. Then you have this other side of things where you have African nations using French currency, right? And then you have the French have that full ability to devalue or debase that currency as they see fit to fit their own agendas. And any African leader that has come through, tried to make a change to this situation, I think we've seen that all of them had the same fate, whether it's Patrice Lumumba, Sankara, and I think we start to see that they're all trying to accomplish the same sort of thing. And they all failed. If you apply Bitcoin into this same situations, right, to solve the same problems. Like, let's talk about, say, Gaddafi, for example, trying to he pushes forward this idea of United States of Africa having a separate currency.
Yep.
And there is someone you can go take out. It's like Ethereum, right? If a bunch of, if a bunch of people if a bunch of people start transacting on Ethereum and they don't like how it's going, they'll just go find Vitalik and his team and say, hey, change this. That's the same thing, all right? That's the same failure that we see with fiat currencies, right? I think Gaddafi's idea was spectacular, but he's a person and he can be taken out. And we saw that. With Bitcoin, there is no one that you can go take out if the people start using Bitcoin as their medium of exchange, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so having that, and then having that ability of sovereign money as a state, right? That also now starts taking you out of the clutches of,
Yes.
Yeah, right. For the other 3-letter organizations.
SWIFT system.
Exactly. And that starts now taking us back to the respect, which I mentioned at the beginning of this, because I think no nation is going to be able to get the full respect that it deserves if they don't even control their own value. So I think that's the major use case for this in Africa. And we can get into the demographics of Africa and all that stuff and why I think this is, I think Africa is going to be one of the biggest beneficiaries of this Bitcoin adoption thing. What are your thoughts on that one?
Fire on, brother. So I would just like to add to that, right? So one of the big words is sanctions, right? Left and right, sanctions everywhere. Right now, Ghana could be sanctioned because it's not accepting of the LGBTQ plus policy that the United States is trying to push for them. Same thing in Zimbabwe, same thing in Kenya. So we have that, right? So if you operate on the Bitcoin standard while you're on a network or a blockchain or a time chain that cannot be sanctioned, it cannot be stopped. Africa needs that heavily, majorly right now. Then there's the aspect of governance. It's a public chain, right? And as we know, they say Africa has one of the most corrupt countries. But we know they're not corrupt just because they are corrupt. The Western countries enable them. The monies that they are stealing are all going back into Swiss bank accounts, UBS accounts. And, the banks get fined just a little bit just for them to continue to do the same. AML. If AML was really working, Africa would not be that corrupt. So yes, a public blockchain like Bitcoin will enable for transparent governance across African nations. That will be major. And then, of course, the money policy, since we had the Bretton Woods agreements after World War II, we're forced to use the US dollar. Nobody's going after the US dollar. It's just that currently, actually, it's been like that ever since, the US dollar has been abused. It's been
heavily.
I mean, you saw what they just did with Russia.
Yeah.
Taking all their assets, right? So, and you have the IMF coming into African nations, constantly borrowing them this money that they print out of tin here, right? And then taking out their full resources, right? Bitcoin now allows African countries to use their natural resources to mine Bitcoin, therefore creating their own money, their own real money. So instead of you worrying about the Russians hijacking your gold mines, your cobalt mines, and et cetera, do that in your own country, mine your own Bitcoin, have your own unbreakable money. Life is great. Another issue that one of the reasons why actually I've quit my job before to move back to Africa to start a business. One of the major issues that I saw was the fact that intercontinental trade was weak. They rather trade with Europe. They rather trade with China and Russia. But African countries are not trading because of your currency got to go all the way through the SWIFT system back to Europe, exchanges before you can even trade with your neighbor next door. Right? Because the US dollar is the standard form of trade. If you use the Bitcoin standard, it's a global format of trade, and you can trade with one another. You can build websites, sell your resources with nations nearby and far away. There's just so much things that Bitcoin can fix on the continent.
I'll point out, like, we are seeing like a breakdown of this iron grip that the dollar has on payments across the world. where, for example, like Russia, right? They will now transact in rubles. They will accept payment for gas in rubles. I think they even accepted Bitcoin one time for payment. And I think Egypt as well. They stopped using the dollar. And so I think with this breakdown, it seems like a great opportunity to have Bitcoin, and Bitcoin will be, right, one of those prominent, how would you say, assets or means of money that will be in the future financial system, unquestionably.
Yeah, 100%. And when I see that, I'm even getting like a little bit angry because we have to use dollar with such a huge power. What it is, like 66 countries use the US dollar as their actual currency. Not even like as a side, like they use the US dollar as a currency, so they can outsource, they can export the inflation, they can print money and let the other countries pay for them. And on top of that, on top of the financial aspect, they can just rule the world with like, oh, you're not like, if you don't behave that way, you don't have access to that one, or you get sanctioned that one. It's like, where are we living? Like that's not fair to anyone.
Exactly.
And even Americans agree with that, that if they get Bitcoin, they're like, of course it's not fair. And America also, I mean, they are quite good also, honestly, with the Bitcoin adoption, especially way better than European Union is. But it's not hardly better than the European Union. But I think the best grassroots movement is in Africa. I think it's the strongest country. I think Nigeria. I think from
that's nuts.
Yeah, I think they're up there in the top 5 of countries that transact in Bitcoin.
Yeah,
yeah.
Is there something else? Like if let's imagine we are on a Bitcoin standard. Let's imagine the whole world, they don't have fiat currency, they don't have national things. Like nobody has say anything about financial currencies. Which, like, by the way, like I recently heard the news with Swiss, like Swiss banks didn't allow Russia assets to leave. Like that's like, we always say like Bitcoin is like a Swiss bank in your pocket. No, Bitcoin is now better than a Swiss bank in your pocket. Way better.
Obama said that.
Exactly.
Obama said that in his most recent interview.
Yeah, it is better than a Swiss bank.
way
it is better. It is better. And it's a lot more secure too.
Yeah.
And you actually have control of it. And you don't have to pay for it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's pretty much like cash, right? Which you're trying to maybe store by yourself, except not under a mattress this time. This time is digital, right? And you can send it across the world, peer to peer. I mean, that's just the most incredible thing. It's really shocking to me that the world is still ignoring this thing at the rate that they are. It's really mind blowing. But I also understand it's going to take time for everyone to understand Bitcoin. But it's almost like once you do, it transforms your brain. Almost.
That's for the entire brain.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's what we're focused on, is how do we transform the African, or reset the African brain to understanding money.
Yeah.
Because that's the biggest challenge. And we've had several shows where we said our mindset has been manipulated to the point that we don't even understand our store of value. What we're doing right now is value being created to the world, right? And that is currency. It's a form of currency, but we probably store it in X,
right,
or YouTube, and they will get that value and they will give us a little sprinkle of it if they ever choose to, because you gotta have certain number of views, etc., etc., etc. That is what fiat is doing to us on a daily basis. It's actually worse on the African continent, because not only do we have bad rulers, I don't want to call them leaders, we have bad rulers, but our ability to store value is being killed by the regular inflation out of bad policy making, but also external decisions being made on the US dollar that has nothing to do with the folks on the ground. But they still get impacted on that. And then there's global trade. You can't compete on the global level because you cannot manufacture. You don't have energy. There's just so many things that now Bitcoin comes in and helps. Like the issue of energy on Africa, on the African continent, is a big thing. Infrastructure. But we got rivers, water, major water, like hydro.
Yeah,
We have
and also,
super sunlight. I mean, we have oil and gas. All that is can help with the infrastructure of energy and also help create the ability for us to store value. But for some odd reason, maybe it's the younger generations in Africa that gets it. The older generations that have been in charge since so-called independence
yeah,
will not let go.
definitely. I mean, I think it's definitely a younger generation sort of thing. So I'm from Cameroon, right? So I was born. By the time I was born, there was some sort of like a overthrowing of the president who was there. Essentially, the actual president being removed and the West putting their own leader in there. And that same guy has been there to this day. And I think throughout my life, it's really just been sitting there watching the same thing over and over again, right? The people revolt, they're met with violence, senseless violence, which is actually ongoing right now.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you go back and settle down. And then you try to do it again, you're met again with violence. So it's almost like you have these leaders there who are set there to keep the people in check
Mm-hmm.
and away from their own prosperity and growth, right? And I think what has been very difficult about overcoming this is this violent aspect. The fact that the people will never ever have the arms to overthrow these governments, even though we're now starting to see that in places like Burkina Faso, Mali, and all these other areas, right? Which is not publicized at all. These are African nations that have straight up told the West to leave their environment, and they have. And I think there are some very powerful changes happening in those areas, which again, not publicized. But these are some of the things that we're keeping a close eye on and hoping to take every opportunity that arises to contribute to that growth. Now, I think having that ability to store your own value and it not being able to be manipulated by any centralized entity, it definitely presents that unique opportunity where we can achieve that change of changing our governance without violence. That is what I'm really excited about with this, because if the people all opt out of using the money, which is the fake money, which is being printed and handed over to them, and used to control them, then I think there has to be some different outcomes from that. I cannot, sit here and say that it's 100% going to be successful, but to be honest, we have not tried anything else, so why not, right? So that's one thing I'm really excited about for this.
Yeah, and Bitcoin is our best shot at this, right? We don't have like what else would we do? Like, it's sometimes interesting for me to think about, like, what would I do when there's no Bitcoin? I don't know, maybe gold, but gold has inherent problems with globalization and digitalizations. Maybe I would do a lot of real estate, but real estate has a lot of problems. Stocks has a lot of problems. Like, I'm so glad that Bitcoin is there. Before I did a lot of stocks and I loved it, but I'm glad that Bitcoin is there right now. And you also mentioned AML, like the KYC AML stories, and I think especially in the EU, there's a lot of regulation on that. And we now also heard the news with Samurai and the Phoenix wallet. Samurai founders arrested, and the Phoenix wallet taking off the US store. Like, I feel like there is like a war on privacy. Everything has to be noted down. You have to get to know, like, your customers in every step of the way. Is it also the same way in Africa? And is madness also going on with you?
It's what's in Africa. So actually, that's one of the things that got us banned on Instagram.
Well, we were just talking about what was happening, and we got banned for that. But I think that it is worse in Africa in the sense that, and this is maybe you look at it differently, but I think it is not functional in Africa. These bans and things like that, I don't think it's actually functional. I mean, yes, they can control the internet and things like that, but there's this thing called VPN, which I'm pretty sure everyone that is interacting with these things is using. And I say it's not functional because Africa does not have the infrastructure to enforce certain type of things. Neither do the people have the level of access and information like we would here in the US. Like there's a lot of things that we take for granted here just because of the level of infrastructure and technology that is available to us. So I believe that, at least for me, the way I see it is, as the younger generation continues to move up, and it is the biggest young generation or young population, right, globally in Africa, it just seems to me that we are in a position to continuously outsmart these ancient people that we've been dealing with, and the ancient mindsets that we've been dealing with from these people. It's kind of like, remember when we're discussing one time about Nigeria having paratroopers dropping in the middle of the city? Yeah. Okay, so there was this one video which was just circling around a while back, it showed the Nigerian military doing
paratrooping
exercises middle of the day in their own country, right? So you have these people just going about their day. The roads are barely there, right? A lot of the infrastructure is not there. It's almost like they're living in the past or something. And all of a sudden you have military falling, soldiers falling out of the sky. The financial system and the enforcement, the things they're trying to enforce, and the reality of what is happening. That's how I see it. It's like having a gate, but then there is a pathway to just walk around it.
Kind of like what they did with Binance recently.
Yeah.
yeah. So I would add to the old AML situation, right? If AML was working on fiat, right, they would not need to. The difficulties of it on cryptocurrencies will not be a big issue.
Yeah.
It's not working in fiat. We all know that. But the narrative is that, cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin is being used for illicit activities, for terrorism. But before Bitcoin existed in 2009, Africa has been the best place for you to go and steal money and take it to the West. So that's one thing. And then Nigeria, for example, introduced the e-Naira, right? So maybe that could be a way for them to kind of know what's going on. That failed miserably because the people do not trust the government. People rather transact in cash or in Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies before they even touch any government-oriented system. There's also solutions like Machinkura that uses just regular phone numbers, so you don't need a digital phone or a digital wallet. Really, it's still a wallet though, but it's stored in a different technology compared to the internet web technologies. So there are multiple solutions that Africans are always coming up with to solve their financial problem and still get around the old AML situation within the country, sometimes even outside of the country.
Dude, some of these African nations, you put your money in the bank and you're not even sure you're going to be able to withdraw it.
It happens to me all the time. I can't take my dollars out when I go.
Yeah. So it's like, what is the point? what is the point of signing up for a bank account and putting your money there, and you can't even, it's like signing up to be robbed. Why are we doing this?
Yeah,
and that's what needs to stop. This is why this education is super important.
Yeah, and the banks have the biggest buildings in every city that you go to, by the way.
That's true. Yeah.
It's also true in Austria. Is there a war on privacy with AML? Like this, I feel like there's a global war going on against the privacy of the citizens.
This is just my perspective on this, but I think that right now, the African perspective on privacy is different from what we're dealing with in the West. Given that they've not been exposed to some of the things that we have here, right? I think it's probably more of an approach to all the way just sideline that. So introducing systems that do not even enable that privacy, if you will. So like you were saying with the introducing the e-Naira, right? It's a lot more difficult. I think it'll be a lot more difficult to actually roll out those CBDCs. So the CBDCs here in the US, because people have experienced what they imagined was, private banking. and then having to shift over to
Government-controlled
this
banking.
government-controlled open system. I think it's easier to introduce something like that in an environment where they've not been exposed to it as much, versus trying to convert the US.
I can see what Robin is saying too, though,
Yeah.
because most of the applications or the systems that we use in Africa are built in the West. So if the West is attacking those systems and saying you cannot have a node, or you cannot have your own private wallet, or you cannot have an anonymous wallet, you must KYC your wallet. Why? Do you need to know how much money I have in my wallet? Like if I was walking down the street and I made some money and someone paid me cash, the government does not need to know that someone paid me cash for my walk down the street. But that is the future of the CBDC that they want to put in place. But Africans, man, I know we're talking about peaceful revolution. Those people would turn a big red eye on you if you bet with their money.
Yeah.
Because they work so hard. They work so hard for the money. And right now, a lot of them still prefer cash because they just don't trust the system.
I told you a lot about 21 Bitcoin, the best place for me to buy Bitcoin directly on a Bitcoin only exchange. But now let's talk about how to secure your Bitcoin. Once you got Bitcoin, you don't want to leave them on exchange. You want to take self-custody. You want to take responsibility of your own Bitcoin. That's why I recommend getting a BitBox. BitBox is an amazing wallet where you can not only keep your Bitcoin in a simple way, very secure, you can even create a passphrase. With that passphrase, you can basically create a hidden wallet on the device itself. Make sure to buy your BitBox in the link down in the description, and with code Robin, you even get a 5% discount. When I talk with African Bitcoiners, CBDCs is not so much on their mind because they know they are like a little bit more resistant to that. I think German would be so easily like CBDC, let's go digital euro, let's adopt it.
Yeah.
There's a digital wallet, there's some tax incentive there. Like I think it would be really easily rolled out in the European Union with the people. And apparently, I don't know for sure, but you know it better. It's different in Africa. It's like the e-Nira, I heard about it. Like this was the first kind of project that failed extremely. Like CBDCs is not something that you're worried about, or is it?
I would say the reason why CBDCs might be successful in the West is because of people are super comfortable. We got used to the credit cards, and then we got used to just swiping away, and now you can use your Apple phone and just tap, and boom, it's paid for. So they're not connecting the dot that you've just given Apple the power to know everything that you spend your money on. This is why you now get advertisement, Facebook, from all these different social media sites, Amazon, just constantly abusing your psychology. So you end up spending more than you actually make because they're constantly pushing ideas of what you can buy to you, right? So we've lost that sense of self. Now we have systems and corporations that actually control us. And in the West, a lot of people are like that. Like literally their mindset is social media, constant selling, buy. So CBDC is just, it's automated now. The government can just automatically take taxes. We've already talked about tax situation, which people are just not connecting the dot that no, it's your store of value. Government and money should be separated. They do not need to know that. In Africa, people are very tight with their money. They're really close, man. They will go to the bank and throw a major fit over some smaller amount of money because they can't access their money.
Yeah, there'll be arguments at the bank every day. I can see. I'll be at the bank. Like, what do you guys mean? Yeah. I think CBDCs is as long as Bitcoin exists, I'm not worried about CBDCs. I think the CBDC thing is going to be more entrapment of the lazy. People will refuse to learn. And I've kind of frequently said this on our show that convenience will be the death of the West. Because things have been made so easy for people that they just keep, gliding along. No one is willing to go through some discomfort in order to get to a better place. And it makes sense because people generally do not like change, right? But as long as Bitcoin exists, I do not see a scenario where CBDC actually wins. I think the point in time when Bitcoin could have been hidden from society as a whole has definitely passed. The time for 51% attack, at least from my perspective, I still think that time has passed. Some people will mention quantum computing, but I guess we'll only have to wait and see. As long as Bitcoin is running as it was intended, right, and whatever people do to it, and it does not fail, I think we all have to be looking at that and acknowledging it as Bitcoiners as a whole, right? We have to be looking at that and acknowledging that we are winning every day. Because the government is not going to let us know that we're winning against them.
They don't want you
this
to
is people who are winning will not come out making publications saying that you should not go buy from exchanges that are
FBI funding.
Okay, people who are winning will not start going after their opponents to arrest them.
Satoshi wallet,
right? And it's not even their opponents. It's just people who are doing better than them. People who are proving that there is a better way to do the things that we're doing right now. This is one thing that I also strongly believe at this point in time. This structure of governance that we have, I don't know if it's globally, but I'll speak for the West specifically. I don't think that it is still capable of governing society in this day and age. The reason I say that is because I think if lockdowns did anything, right, it's kind of put all of us in this place where we got to really see everyone across the globe. And my conclusion is that there is way too many smart people out here, especially on X, okay? Way too many smart people for us to be governed by the group of people that are being governed by right now, okay? If you combine people like Elon and I don't know, insert the name of your favorite smartest person that you have come across here. These people...
Robin Seyr.
Yeah, Robin Seyr. Exactly, right? These people have dropped so much information to the public that anywhere you are these days, right, you've probably gotten more useful information in your life than
CNN
through these people who are
news.
Yeah, we're supposed to be the leaders. So that needs to change. And I think that part of that change comes within Bitcoin. Because there is no way that as a society we can pick up this level of intellect and then go back to using fake money.
100%. And I think it's such a powerful thing when you think about it. Bitcoin has kind of already won, and we are so far ahead. And I think there's at this point nothing that can stop Bitcoin. But even if we theoretically say there's something happening with Bitcoin, like even like, I don't know, in 5 years it dies off because of something, I don't know. Even then, the idea is still valid. This idea of sound money, the Austrian economics sides of things, those things are valid. And we are, as a Bitcoin community, now a group together that is holding really strongly together. We are connecting every day. I'm every day on a podcast with someone else. Like we are all like a really huge and powerful group of people that want sound money. We would spin something else up. Like we want sound money. We are not giving up just because something fails. I think Bitcoin will never fail. I think Bitcoin will succeed and we have sound money for the world in 10 years, 50 years, 100 years, whatever. The timing is always tricky to predict. But even when we don't succeed, like there is a group of people that really want sound money and they're sticking together and they are willing to fight for that future. And that's something beautiful, honestly. It's nice to see so many people agreeing on something and going forward and doing something. It's like, I don't know if you're a lot on Bitcoin conferences, but it's always a magical experience when you have so many great people in one place and celebrating together.
Absolutely. Well, I think a Bitcoin conference is every day.
Just on X. Just get on X, man.
And I think, that Bitcoin conference is also every day as long as you're holding the Bitcoin. It is like this one thing that is the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And you can either accept it or not. Yeah. So
100%. What's your thought on the Bitcoin ETF? BlackRock is buying now a lot of Bitcoin. What's your thoughts on the launch? Did you like it, or what? Like, did you were expecting the massive buyings? Did you expect the outflow? Like, it's interesting to see what Bitcoiners are thinking of the Bitcoin ETF.
yeah.
So we have strategy sessions at Stack just to figure out processes for efficient money, because just like you said, you started out with stocks as well. We did stocks for the longest. We used to have a channel where we used to talk about the next stock to trade, and we used to use several AI tools before AI was just a big thing to look for the next move the next day. And a good story was when we found about Neo, the pump up on Neo, AMC, and GME using this AI tool. And we got in the trade. We woke up the next morning, we were up several thousands of dollars. And to find out that we were frozen out of the system, we could not exit our trade. That was one of the worst part of our lives, trading in the fiat stock market, right? So we're like, no, there's got to be a solution, right? So one of the real actually we started out with Cardano. But to answer your question though,
I was buying Bitcoin since it was like 8K, remember?
this guy was buying and selling.
I was selling it. I was making that mistake. Yeah. It's cool.
So when the ETF came, I was like, okay, here's the solution. They're either trying to get us back to the double printing, because now you can extend the amount of Bitcoin that exists. This is my conclusion of what the ETFs are doing. Because not only are you not buying the 21 million limited Bitcoin, you're now buying this concept of a Bitcoin that somebody else owns for you or holds for you and charges you a fee to hold for you, that you can never actually hold the real assets or the real commodity, right? So that is one aspect of thinking of the ETFs. But then when we think about it, we'll give the banks our money. Most people think about that. That's just a convenient way. Just put your money at the bank will hold it for you, pay you a little fee, whereas the money's no longer yours. They've loaned it out. They've made a lot of money. That's exactly the same thing the ETF is doing. You're just trying to make it simple for folks, not going into the old technical finance aspect of it. BlackRock buys out the Bitcoin, charges you a fee to hold the Bitcoin, and they can do anything they want with that Bitcoin to scale it. You know, they can long calls, short calls, open all the different tools that you can use to scale and expand on that asset that you have. They can do that. They can short it, they can long it, they can take out loans on it, etc., etc. BlackRock gets a lot much richer, while you just watch the charts and see it go up and down, limited return. But this is what we did. You cannot win in the fiat space. I mean, you can try to win. You have a limited amount of winning you can do. So one of the things that we did was, okay, we have our retirement accounts. If we take money out, we're going to have to pay some major fees. We get taxed here in the US for taking money out of our retirement account. I was like, hey, heck it, man. We're going to take some money out. At least the one that my current employer manages. We'll take some money out, but we're not paying the fees because we got to pay the money back. And we then use that money to buy the actual Bitcoin, which is actually performing better than our retirement account. And then the retirement account with our previous employers, I just went and bought IBIT. Like, okay, you want to play the game? I would just buy some of that within my retirement account to buy the Bitcoin ETF, to buy a Marathon, to buy Riot, to buy MSTR. So that's what I did inside those accounts as my way of, as my play of the Bitcoin revolution.
And you said also before that you were before not in Africa and now moved back because of you wanted to start a business there, like you were before in America.
So I've been in America forever, but I co-founded an airline with my childhood friend. We grew up together. Went to Nigeria. By the time I got to Nigeria, I found out that my name has been removed from the company's ownership. So I got screwed, and then I came back to the US to start all over again.
Okay, and now you're both in the US. Oh, okay.
I'll be going back though. I'll be going back. Make no mistake about that. Well, I'm actually, I'll put it this way. A lot of Africans at this point in time, okay, are hearing the call from the motherland. And you'll be hard pressed to find an African these days that does not have a plan, or I think it is slowly becoming more and more evident every day that it is way more advantageous for us to be back in the African continent and engaging in business, because the potential for the future is something that I cannot even begin to explain. You can think of it like a Bitcoin bull run, maybe just a little bit less, because the society and things will move a little bit
slower resistance.
Yeah.
And you also don't have the charts like for in Bitcoin. It's amazing because you have the price chart to watch when something's going on. And it's like, but you don't have a African chart where you're like, oh, Africa.
Whoa.
Maybe we need an African chart.
We do have some sort of an African chart. So if you look at foreign investment on the continent, the sad situation is that a lot of them are investing in fintechs, right? They're not investing in agriculture, they're not investing in infrastructure, they're not investing in energy. Fintech. And what does fintech do? Banking system, pull the resources out, squeeze the people out. But the money is going in there, though. That's the interesting part. So yeah, that's the chart that we get to see, is that China is coming in, Russia is coming in heavily, and the United States is lagging behind, even though they are still throwing a lot of money into fintech startups. So the way we see the chart right now is that development in Africa might be slow, but foreign investment from the Chinese and the Russian is moving in super fast. So what the Africans outside of the continent doing, just looking on the sidelines, before you know it, it's going to be like Jamaica or some of these island nations where it's all foreigners that own the land, and the actual aboriginals don't own anything. Kind of like what happened to Haiti.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. I don't think that as much as that looks like that's what can happen, I just don't think that's what will happen anymore. Simply for the fact that there is definitely a strong uprising happening across a multitude of African nations right now. And at the pace that these things are happening, I think the trends are going to definitely change direction. For sure.
And
now, one thing that Novelo mentioned was, the Chinese and Russian investments that are coming in there. I think one of the main things are just different. And, when it comes to the Western nations, like the US and France, I think their approach, which brings us back to this respect issue, their approach over the years have not been ones that have been productive for the African communities, versus what we're seeing with Russia, where it's an attempt at collaboration to also build within the environment that they're doing business with these people. So those are the things that I'm looking forward to seeing how they evolve and participating in them as well, of course.
Really cool. Yeah. It's so fascinating for me to see that we are living through a huge change. I mean, I think the most glamorous example is El Salvador, because it's all over our feeds in X. And I've talked with a lot of El Salvadorians, and you can just see if like a country that was literally on the bottom. Like I think El Salvador with the highest murder rate, with the economic situation, they were like on the bottom of the list, and now they're actually having a president who gives out free passports to skilled people. He's adopting a Bitcoin standard. He's getting rid of the gangs. Like he is doing a lot of great work. It's beyond Bitcoin even. So it's like not all contributed to Bitcoin, of course, but it's a lot of great work that he does. And the country is getting more and more attractive. Like people from the outside want to live there. I interviewed already 2 El Salvadorians that were living outside of El Salvador and now moved back because of Nayib Bukele. And this can happen to all countries that are that want to move forward, that they want to be brave and embrace new technology, regardless if it's Bitcoin, if it's IT systems, AI, and anything. Like, you have to embrace the new systems, and that's how you get advantage over the US stuff like that. So it's really interesting to see that playing out in real time. And I don't know if I stay in Austria all the time, because I see it also, like, as you mentioned before, I think the West is getting convenient, and they don't know what hard work is. Like, I work 12 to 14 hours every day from Monday to Sunday, but I'm like a small exception in my friends group. There are a few obviously high performers that are doing a lot of work, and I don't even consider it work, because I'm just like doing Bitcoin content, which feels like heaven to me. But that's another story. And most people are so replaceable. I go to usual parties with non-Bitcoiners, and I'm talking with them. I'm like, your job will be replaced in 5 years at latest with some AI thing. Like, you will be replaced like so quickly. You will not see it coming, and that's interesting to live through. But what I missed in the beginning is like your orange pilling story. Like, how did you get into Bitcoin? And the most important question, of course, who got it first from both of you?
Yeah, so I got the Bitcoin first, and to be honest, I feel like I got orange pilled twice, because I would say I probably orange pilled myself the first time, because when I actually need to look on Robinhood. I probably bought it even sooner.
Yeah.
So I initially bought Bitcoin. I was buying it somewhere on between Cash App and Robinhood. We checked, like, the first times when I was buying it on Cash App, it was like $8,000 for Bitcoin. But back then I was buying it. When I bought it back then, I did not even buy it because I was trying to necessarily make some profit, even though I did sell it quite a few times to barely make profit. But just reading the description of it, it spoke to me for sure.
It spoke to your soul.
Yes, it definitely spoke to my soul by just reading the description of it the first time. But then I did not really take a deeper dive into it. I just bought it and held it. I'm like, all right, I guess I'm one of, I should be early on to be having this thing. Let's see what happens to it next, right? Like, what's going to happen next? Are we going to be able to pay for things? Are the banks going to start accepting it? But little did I know, we're not going down that road at all. And so I think I started exploring cryptocurrencies as a whole with Double O. Navigated the whole shitcoinery system.
Hey, man, you got to tell them the Cardano story.
Which one is that?
Cardano.
So long. Oh, yeah. Well, we bought a lot of Cardano.
Complex.
I used all sorts of crazy
Pancake Swap and all the wonderful DEX.
Yeah, DEXs and lending platforms and all
farming and all that stuff.
We've done it all. Then I think the second time I got red pill was in the middle. We got to Miami, and I think this was something by Mark Moss.
Yeah, Mark Moss.
Right. I forgot the name of it, but this was an event by Mark Moss, and I remember I was speaking to I met this chick there, and she was cool chick. We're friends, and we started talking about blockchain technology, and she would not talk about anything outside of Bitcoin, but she was just very adamant about anything else. It was just Bitcoin or nothing else. But I think her conviction of Bitcoin is what really made me go back and go, well, how is this person this way? And they will not listen to anything else. And so I really took the opportunity to really start taking a deep dive. That's when I started falling down the rabbit hole. And ever since then, it's, just been transformation of my mind in many different ways, man. It forces you to learn more things. This is how I came across. It's because of Bitcoin, where I sat there and watched a whole semester of economics from MIT. No, it was not even astronaut. It was just economics, whatever they're teaching here at Chicago school. That's also when I came across the videos of Gary Gensler teaching blockchain technology at MIT as well. And then then I started diving into, that's when I found macro was Austrian economics as well. Sorry about that. Started reading. This is you may have seen the Austrian economics website. They give out these books for free. So it's I think the thing is it's more than just money or for a medium of exchange. It's really something special because it transforms you as a person as well for the better. I would say that if you take the time out to really study it and get it.
Yep.
Yeah.
My journey is, I think it's funny. So I paid up all my debts, got married, and I was like, all right, we just got funding from a Series A investor. Time to quit my job and move to Nigeria. So on my way out, it's like I gotta research where to put some of my savings. So I like, okay, I found out about blockchains. I did not know where to buy Bitcoin at the time, but I knew my youngest brother was buying cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin. So I was like, hey, here's $1,000, buy some Bitcoin. I just gave him the money, went to Nigeria, focused on, because sometimes when you focus on your business, you just gotta focus on the business alone. Long story short, everything happened with the business. 2 years later, I'm back in the States, starting all over. And I was like, hey, what did you buy? My brother said they bought B-Pro. I was like, oh, so we call him B-Pro now. It's a joke.
One of the strongest coins on earth, my guy.
So he got B-Pro.
It always looks like it's going up, but it's never going up.
So I did not buy Bitcoin. B-Pro was what we bought. So long story short, he and I got together. We started working on STAKK. Started trading the markets. And then he said, Kenny, we should check out Cardano. Then we read into Cardano. Of course, we're very passionate about the African continent. We saw what Cardano was doing in Addis Ababa. We looked at what the network was doing, all the development. People hated Cardano so much. At the time, I was like, why did they hate Charles Hoskinson? Well, now we know why people hate him. But we're putting our energy into the space. We're promoting Cardano. We're actually giving out Cardano for people that follow our show at one point.
You should probably not be saying that because the SEC is going to come after someone.
History lessons. But then, we went to the Bitcoin conference with Mac Moss. And then we actually had a chat with him and said, you guys need to look deeper into this. And after he mentioned that, we all came home and we started reading more about it. And I think ever since reading the Bitcoin Standard, for me, it's been a different story. I thought I knew what money was because I was always big into finance, investing in real estate, investing in stock markets, ETFs, starting up my own business, doing everything that you think you need to do to get your money to grow, to have value so that it doesn't get killed by inflation. But then you realize you can keep fighting. I mean, you can make it to the 5%. Of the people that are super rich after fighting your way up, but you still have inflation and taxation to constantly fight with it.
All it takes is for Gary Gensler to come out and say we're increasing interest rates.
Yeah, so that was the transition for me. And for me, it was a lot much harder for him because I had a technology background. So I haven't gone to school for technology. I saw blockchains as kind of like how people see Ethereum. Oh, you can now do this on the blockchain. It's a software. It's an enterprise architecture in the cloud. But then when you start understanding Bitcoin, understanding money, it's like, no, somebody else is still controlling it. We are trying to get away from that. That is the solution that we need to focus on right now. Like decentralized money, take away central authority from the control of your power, your energy, your store value.
Beautiful stories, man. Really cool. Cardano, I never went in. I was just a little bit in Ethereum or some other smaller shitcoins. But Cardano, I avoided from the start, fortunately. But I lost a lot of money. I also did the whole Celsius thing. I think I got some money back like a few weeks back from it. Like it was like, I actually get something back from that. It's interesting. But I regret that massively. So I think everybody has his phases and getting slower to the Bitcoin world.
I have a question for you. Have you been rock pool before?
What?
Just genuine.
Rock pool?
Rock pool.
Oh, rock pool.
Yes. Like you put your money in the exchange or some coin or some wallet and it just gone.
I actually did not do it. Like I did not do it, but I also did not experience that in total. Celsius was the closest thing to that, but I got, I think, 70% of my money back, something like that. So it was not that bad. I still got, like, they still stole my money and they still messed up in a big way, but at least I got like the majority back, which feels not that bad. But extreme rug pull, no, not really. I invested in a shitcoin that went just down like 80%, so I lost 80% of a really small amount that I put in there, which is not that bad, because it was like not even 1% of my portfolio. It was just like a small play, which was stupid. But we all have to make our mistakes, I guess.
It's good to learn.
Definitely. Before we get to our end routine, I have one more question, which I'm in the last time really passionate about, finding out what Bitcoiners are passionate about besides Bitcoin. So what are you currently learning, doing, whatever it is, that is really where you are really passionate about it besides Bitcoin?
Man, I'm passionate about a lot of things, man. I do quite a... there's go-kart racing, there's actual racing, there's online racing, there is I think I named 3 types of racing there. I think
everything racing, F1 racing.
Yeah, a lot of racing stuff.
Yeah.
I'm still passionate about business. I think that looking at things how I see them now, on kind of understanding things on a more global scale. I'm interested in trying to engage in more international business, because business has always just been a passion of mine as well. So wherever there is an opportunity to provide a solution to a certain issue, right, I think that it always strikes my interest to be able to provide, a solution to that, and to be able to gain from it. Other than that, I think, just learning all the new things that are coming out, even though it just seems that things are just changing these days at a pace that is almost unsustainable to keep up with. But I try to learn as much as I can about new things. Keep it pushing that way.
It's a tough question. I think it's a really tough question, because I personally feel like my life has been one of constant adaptation. So I might really love doing something for now, and then over time I have to transition to something else. For most of my life, it was soccer, playing soccer all the time. But then, having married, having kids, I can't do much of that anymore. Plus, I messed up my knee playing soccer, so I have to, put that on the side. But as Bryson said, which is one of the things that I think brought both of us together, is that we're very passionate about problem solving, in the business area, or even in the workforce. When I was much younger, my dad asked me what I wanted to do, so he gave me this book and said, "Hey, these are all the different careers. Choose one." I knew I always loved aviation when I was a kid. Actually, my son now loves space and aircraft and everything. I probably get it from me. So I wish him the best. But I've tried that passion of mine. Things happened. I've let that passion go. So my new passion is just, again, same thing, problem solving, which is one of the reasons why we're in the Bitcoin space and doing education now. So what we're doing right now is our passion, trying to get the education out there, teaching people about what money really is, saving their lives. And then, my grandmother taught me a lot. So we have a nonprofit on her behalf. And when I go to Nigeria, what I'm doing is giving back, paying for people's education, again, educating people and just helping out the community. So I think that's where my passion stays.
Beautiful. I love it. We have an end routine in the podcast, which is really interesting, where the previous guest is asking a question for the next guest, without knowing who the next guest actually is. Your question is, what is freedom for you?
What is freedom? That's a really good question.
Gotta go first.
Yeah, I think I already have my answer. I have my answer.
Freedom! Oh man, I wish I had my background because if I was at my station on this interview, my background is freedom with a Bitcoin sign in the middle. Uh, and being a second twin, because I'm a twin, right? That's been my drive ever since, because it's always the first twin on the African culture that gets everything, that, it's the senior brother and all that stuff. Like, no, I gotta do things my way. So part of that freedom is even changing my name. So my name is Kende in Yoruba, right? Which means the second born. You're always like this, the refer to the next. Like, you're not first. You're not free to express yourself. So it's now called Kenny, Kenneth, which is a handsome young man fellow, that's part of my old freedom story. But back to your question about what's freedom. Freedom to me is it's really your ability to be able to express yourself, to be yourself, without the external pressure or forces that try to put you in a box, right? And I would say in several of our recordings, because I'm not religious, but there's this book of Ecclesiastes in the Bible that talks about what money is, and it says money is everything. Literally, everything that we do is stored in money. That's the technology that we human beings came up with many, many years ago to be able to store our value instead of trade by barter, because there was no way to transfer that already created energy, right? From the US to Africa with the value that you've created, without some central authority saying you cannot do that. Like, you're everybody's a sovereign human being. The borders is a construct of what these authorities or this establishment has put in there, right? Freedom is being able to get yourself away from that, right? Freedom is your ability for us to have this communication without someone saying, no, you cannot do that. That's freedom for me. And I believe that Bitcoin allows us to do that. If they want to ban you on X, you go to Nostr. They cannot ban you on Nostr. If you want to transact with somebody in Russia, because you have family members in Russia, you have the freedom to do that. Nobody can ban you from doing that. If you want to help other people, you have the freedom to send them money to do that. Nobody can ban you from doing that. The story goes on and on. And I think for me, it has started since my childhood, because I've always having to push back and push back and push back. And now you also have a technology that supports that. So to me, that's what freedom is.
That's beautiful. Really cool.
I'll give you guys my answer here. Freedom is your natural state. You're born into this world a free human being. That's freedom. Okay. There is no laws and all those other things when you're born into this world, right? It's like, you can think of it like a wild animal. Okay, that's what freedom is. And so at that point in time, it's now up to you to be able to make the right choices to maintain your freedom. Because I think a lot of times people look at freedom as do whatever you want. It is a natural state that you're in. And then you have to apply discipline, making those right choices, right, to maintain that freedom. You may have heard the saying, there is freedom in discipline.
Yep.
Right. So that is what it is. Setting your morals, setting your boundaries, setting your rules, and then doing everything to uphold those things for yourself and for the people you love.
Yep.
Without intervention from foreign entities like governments, right? Because the only thing that is standing in the way of our freedom is other people putting so-called guidelines with the backing of violence. That's what it is, right? Whether they come and arrest you and throw you in jail or shoot you, whatever the case may be. You see people who have exercised their freedom get taken out by other people who felt threatened by other people exercising their freedoms. So that is what freedom is to me. That's the first thing, because that is the most, how can I say, urgent and most realistic thing that we're dealing with right now, right? So freedom is just that ability to maintain the value that you earn, right, based on the choices that you make. And having all of that happen in a sovereign manner. That's straight up.
That's also extremely beautiful. I love that question because it's such an important question, and what most don't realize that freedom is not free. Like you have for freedom, you always have to fight. Like the freedom is like basically the ability to say no to everything and yes to everything that you want, and that's like. It's hard to accomplish, but in general, like you have to work for it. You have to be disciplined in order for yourself and for others to achieve the freedom you want. It was a really cool talk with you. And I could go on for like another 2 hours probably, but I think we will make the same thing on your channel also, and I will link it on my channel, the episode with your channel. So if someone just listened to that one, they can go ahead and go to your channel and listen to the basically the second one we are doing on your channels. Before I let you go, where can people find you? Where can people ask you questions if they are curious about your opinions and they want to know more about you?
Absolutely. So we are on YouTube as STAKK. We're also on X as STAKK. We're most active on X. And if you have any questions, for sure, ask us over there. We have a lot of videos where we speak and we share a lot of our opinions. We go live on the weekends, some weekends as well. We're still working out that schedule, but these are the main areas where you can find us. It's been really interesting and fun to be on the show with you as well, Robin. This has been some really good questions, first of all.
Yes.
And really allowed us to think more about our mission in the Bitcoin space as well. So thank you for that.
Thank you for being on.
Yeah.
By the way, at STAKKFIN. STAKKFIN.
Oh, is it STAKKFIN now?
Yeah.
STAKKFIN. STAKKFIN on X. There we go. Yeah.
I will link to your X profile in the description so people can just like go there and find you the best way.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for being on.
Absolutely. Have a good one.